Do you find yourself awake at night or lost during the day, wondering, is this person really right for me? It might be a fleeting thought, the kind that sneaks up when the excitement fades or during those quiet moments when you're left alone with your feelings. You try to brush it off because, well, every relationship has its challenges, right? But we both know there's something more to it. When that doubt becomes more than a passing thought, it's worth asking why it's there in the first place. Love can be complicated, it's messy, raw, and vulnerable. It's not supposed to feel like a constant battle with yourself. There's a difference between working through normal challenges and forcing yourself to fit into something that just doesn't align with who you are. And yet, so many of us cling to relationships that don't feel quite right. Not because we're happy, but because we're afraid of the alternative. Let's get real for a moment. Recognizing the signs that you're dating the wrong person isn't easy. It takes courage to look at your relationship honestly and ask the hard questions. But when you do, you take back your power. You start to value your own peace, your goals, and your ability to grow. Today, we're going to talk about those signs, the ones we often ignore or cover up with excuses. This video will help you gain clarity and confidence in understanding the truth about your relationship. So let's get into it. Before we begin, please subscribe and tap the notification bell so you never miss out on more amazing videos like this. Let's get started. You're constantly walking on eggshells. If you're always afraid of saying the wrong thing, it might be time to ask yourself if it's really love or fear. Emotional safety is the foundation of any healthy relationship, and without it, love can quickly feel like a game of survival. You find yourself weighing every word before you speak, second-guessing your tone, or replaying conversations in your mind to figure out where you might have gone wrong. It's exhausting, isn't it? To constantly navigate a minefield that's supposed to feel like home. Think about this for a moment. Have you ever caught yourself tensing up before bringing up an issue? Maybe you wanted to talk about something simple, how their habits affect you, a small miscommunication, or even a boundary you'd like to establish. But your heart races at the thought of how they might react. Will they get defensive? Dismiss your feelings? Turn the conversation around so suddenly you're the one apologizing? This isn't love, it's self-preservation. A healthy relationship doesn't feel like a courtroom where you're pleading your case just to avoid conflict. Let's bring this back to Stoicism for a moment. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Emotional safety begins with understanding that while you can't control your partner's reactions, you can control your response to the situation. If their behavior repeatedly disrupts your peace, it's worth asking why you're allowing that pattern to continue. Always remember that a healthy relationship is one where you feel free to express yourself without fear of judgment, ridicule, or punishment. You should be able to show up as your most authentic self, even in moments of vulnerability. If you're suppressing your voice, your needs, or your boundaries just to keep the peace, what you're really doing is trading your emotional health for temporary stability. And that trade-off isn't sustainable. Let's unpack what this might look like day to day. Maybe you avoid asking for what you need, time, support, or even affection, because it's easier than dealing with their response. Or perhaps you tiptoe around conversations about money, future plans, or past mistakes because you know those topics will lead to an argument. Over time, you begin to internalize the idea that your feelings don't matter as much as theirs. You learn to avoid conflict at all costs, even if it means betraying your own truth. But the harsh reality is that this isn't love. Love doesn't require you to walk on eggshells. It doesn't demand that you shrink yourself or silence your thoughts just to avoid conflict. Real love holds space for difficult conversations, for disagreements, and even for hurt feelings, because it's built on trust, not fear. How to change this dynamic? First, take an honest look at your relationship. Start by journaling about recurring patterns. Ask yourself, are there certain topics I avoid because they always lead to conflict? Do I feel heard and valued when I express my feelings, or do I feel dismissed? Am I constantly apologizing for things I shouldn't have to apologize for? Writing things down can be incredibly powerful because it helps you see the bigger picture. Patterns that felt random or insignificant start to come into focus. And with clarity comes the ability to make better decisions. Next, try to practice open communication. This doesn't mean confronting your partner with anger or blame. It means approaching the conversation with curiosity and vulnerability. For example, instead of saying, "You never listen to me," try something like, "I feel like I'm not being heard sometimes, and it's really important to me that we work on this together." Notice how the focus shifts from accusation to collaboration. Of course, communication is a two-way street. If your partner is willing to meet you halfway, there's hope for growth and change. But if they respond with defensiveness, gaslighting, or outright hostility, it's a sign that the relationship may not be as emotionally safe as it needs to be. Remember, your peace of mind is priceless. Stoic philosophy teaches us to prioritize our inner world above all else. No relationship, no matter how much history or potential it holds, is worth sacrificing your emotional well-being. If you find yourself constantly walking on eggshells, it's time to ask a hard question: are you staying because you're truly happy, or because you're afraid of what might happen if you leave? The choice to address this dynamic, or to walk away if it doesn't improve, requires courage. But here's the good news: every step you take toward protecting your peace brings you closer to the kind of relationship you truly deserve, one built on trust, respect, and the freedom to be yourself. After all, isn't that the kind of love you're worthy of? Your values and goals don't align. Love sees a completely different future than you do. It's a hard question, isn't it? Love can feel so intoxicating that it tricks us into thinking it's enough to fix anything. But no amount of love can rewrite Simeon's life script. If your values and goals are pointing in opposite directions, it's like trying to build a house on two separate blueprints. It just doesn't work. Let's start with what this looks like in real life. Maybe you've always dreamed of traveling the world, spending months exploring new cultures, and chasing adventure. But your partner? They want to buy a house in the suburbs, plant roots, and settle into a steady, predictable rhythm. Or perhaps you're fiercely driven in your career, determined to build something big, while they see work as a means to an end and value a simpler, slower pace of life. These aren't just surface-level preferences, they're core pieces of who you are. Now, it's one thing to compromise on the small stuff: what to have for dinner, what show to binge-watch. But when it comes to the bigger picture, compromise starts to feel more like a sacrifice. And here's the painful part: if you ignore these mismatches, they don't go away. They fester. Over time, resentment starts creeping in, not because you don't love each other, but because you're constantly feeling like you have to choose between who you are and who they want you to be. Let's break this down even further. Think of relationships as a journey. You're both boarding the same train, but if your destinations are completely different, what happens? One of two things: either one of you abandons your dream and stays on the train for the sake of the other, or you both keep going, but one of you always feels lost, like you're traveling away from the life you wanted. In both scenarios, there's no winning. This isn't to say that people in a relationship need to be carbon copies of each other. You can have different interests, personalities, and approaches to life and still make it work. But when it comes to core values, things like family, career, lifestyle, and your vision for the future, you need to be aligned. Otherwise, you're constantly pulling in opposite directions, wearing yourselves down in the process. Have you ever had a conversation with your partner about what you both want long-term? Not just vague ideas like "I want to be happy" or "I want to be successful," but specific, concrete goals? Do you see yourselves in the same type of relationship? Do you both want kids, or is one of you unsure? Are you both willing to make sacrifices for your careers, or does one of you value stability over ambition? These aren't easy questions, but avoiding them doesn't make the answers any less important. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary? And when it comes to relationships, the necessary question is about alignment. Are you and your partner truly moving in the same direction, or are you staying together simply because it feels easier than having the hard conversations? Alignment doesn't mean perfection. Even the most compatible couples have moments of disagreement. But alignment means that, at the core, your values aren't in conflict. It means you both have a shared understanding of what matters most and a willingness to build that future together. So how do you figure out if you're aligned? Start by having honest conversations, early and often. Don't wait until you're 3 years into the relationship and one of you is envisioning a wedding while the other is imagining a solo backpacking trip through Southeast Asia. Sit down and talk about the big stuff. Be direct but compassionate. Ask questions like, what do you see your life looking like in 5 or 10 years? How do you feel about starting a family someday? What's most important to you, career, stability, adventure, or something else? Of course, compromise is part of any relationship. But compromise has its limits. There's a difference between meeting someone halfway and giving up pieces of yourself just to keep the peace. The former strengthens your bond, the latter erodes your sense of self. So ask yourself, are you and your partner truly building a shared vision for the future, or are you trying to force your paths to merge when they're naturally diverging? The answer might not come easily, but clarity is always worth the discomfort. And if you realize that your goals don't align, it doesn't mean you've failed. It simply means you're learning to prioritize your own happiness and growth, which is the bravest thing you can do. At the end of the day, love is about partnership. It's about building something together, brick by brick, with shared intentions and mutual respect. If your values and goals align, the journey will feel steady, even when it's challenging. But if you're constantly trying to pull each other in opposite directions, the journey will only leave you both feeling lost. And you deserve so much more than that. The relationship feels one-sided. Love isn't a scorecard, but it's also not supposed to feel like a solo game. If you're constantly the one making plans, reaching out, or bending to keep the peace, you need to ask yourself, are you in a partnership or an emotional tug-of-war? A one-sided relationship is subtle at first. Maybe you read one always texting first, thinking it's just how they are. Or you're the one planning dates, making sacrifices, or offering support, while receiving very little in return. Over time, these small sacrifices add up. It begins to feel like you're putting your heart into something that barely echoes back. Let's take an example. You spend hours planning a special date because you know it'll make them happy. But when it's over, there's no gratitude, no reciprocation, or worse, they don't even notice the effort you put in. Instead of feeling appreciated, you're left questioning if you're asking for too much or if you're just not enough. And that's a wound love should never leave behind. The truth is, relationships thrive on mutual investment. It's not about counting who did what or keeping tabs on favors. It's about showing up for each other in ways that make you feel seen, valued, and cherished. When the balance is off, when one person is always giving while the other is comfortably taking, it becomes less of a relationship and more of a slow drain on your energy, confidence, and peace. Stoicism offers an incredible lesson here. Epictetus famously taught, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. If your relationship feels one-sided, it's worth reflecting, are you trying to control what's outside your power? Are you chasing affection or validation that should come naturally in a healthy partnership? If the effort to feel valued feels exhausting, maybe it's time to pause and ask yourself, what am I really holding on to? Recognizing these patterns is the first step toward breaking them. If you find yourself always initiating communication, planning, making sacrifices, it's time to take a step back. A healthy relationship isn't about one person being perfect, it's about two people being willing to grow together. If you've voiced your feelings, set boundaries, and still see no change, it's time to make a choice. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what we can control. And here's the reality, you can't control how someone shows up in a relationship. You can't force them to value you, reciprocate your efforts, or change their behavior. But you can control how you respond. At the end of the day, being in a one-sided relationship is far lonelier than being single. Love should feel like a two-way street, not a marathon. If you're the only one showing up, it's time to ask yourself, are you holding on to the potential of what could be, or are you honoring the reality of what is? A relationship that leaves you drained isn't love. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is letting go of what's not meant for you. You can't be your authentic self. If you have to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's world, are you really in a relationship or just playing a role? This might be one of the hardest truths to face because, at first, it's easy to convince yourself that it's normal. Maybe you start by biting your tongue on small things, thinking it's compromise. But over time, the little ways you hold back become walls, and suddenly, you're not even sure who you are anymore. Let's say you're in a relationship with someone who has a passion you don't share, so you pretend to enjoy it. Maybe it's a hobby, a belief system, or even just their favorite type of music. You laugh at jokes you don't find funny, agree with opinions you don't hold, or force yourself to blend in with their friends even though you feel like an outsider. And those personal things you once loved about yourself, the ones that made you feel unique, slowly start to disappear because you thought it'd be too much for this person to handle. What's worse is that this dynamic can creep into vulnerable moments too. You might hesitate to share how you're really feeling, whether it's stress at work, excitement about a goal, or even doubts about the relationship, because you're not sure they'll accept it. You end up censoring yourself, choosing your words carefully, and second-guessing how they'll react. And in the process, you lose the comfort and ease that should come naturally when you're with someone who truly sees you. A relationship should feel like sunlight for a garden, helping you grow, not suffocating your roots. Think about a healthy garden. Every plant has its own spacito flourish. Some are bright and showy, others are quiet and understated, but together they create something vibrant and alive. Now, imagine trying to force every plant into the same shape or trimming the ones that grow too tall. The garden wouldn't thrive, it would wither. And the same is true for relationships. This is where Stoicism offers more clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Replace good man with true self, and you have a reminder that authenticity isn't negotiable. Pretending to be someone you're not doesn't just cost you your peace, it disconnects you from your true purpose. A Stoic approach calls us to live in alignment with our nature, not someone else's expectations. Ask yourself, when was the last time I felt fully at ease with my partner? Am I hiding parts of myself to avoid conflict or rejection? Do I feel seen and valued for who I truly am, or only for the version of me that fits their preferences? These aren't easy questions, but they're necessary. Because here's the truth, when you sacrifice your authenticity, you're not building a real connection, you're building an illusion. And illusions crumble under the weight of real life. Rediscovering your authentic self, it starts with small but meaningful steps. Reconnect with the things that make you feel alive, even if they don't align with your partner's interests. Maybe it's a hobby you stop pursuing, a type of music you love, or even just speaking your mind about something you care about. These moments of self-expression remind you of who you are beneath the mask. Next, bring that authenticity back into the relationship. This doesn't have to be confrontational. It's about inviting your partner into your world. Share a story about why you love something. Express an opinion you've been holding back. Let them see a vulnerable side of you. If their reaction shows acceptance, that's a good sign. It means the relationship has the potential to grow into something stronger, where both people can be their full selves. But if they resist or reject your authenticity, it's worth asking, am I building a future with someone who doesn't truly see me? Remember, the right relationship isn't about blending into someone else's life. It's about creating a shared space where both people can thrive as individuals while growing together. You shouldn't have to dim your light to make someone else comfortable. The person who's truly meant for you will celebrate your brightness, even if it's different from their own. So, if you've been wearing a mask, out of fear, out of habit, or out of love, know this, it's never too late to take it off. The right person won't ask you to shrink yourself. They'll make you feel safe enough to grow. And the moment you choose to live authentically, you open the door to a love that's real, rooted, and unapologetically true. You're staying out of fear. Fear has a way of rooting us in places we don't belong. It whispers, what if this is the best you'll ever have? Or what if you're alone forever? And so, we stay. We cling to a relationship that doesn't bring joy, fulfillment, or growth, not because it's what we truly want, but because we're too afraid to let it go. Let's be honest, the thought of starting over is terrifying. The idea of walking away from years of shared memories, routines, and plans feels overwhelming. Maybe you've invested so much in the relationship, time, effort, even dreams, that leaving feels like failure. Or maybe it's the fear of the unknown, the quiet dread of being alone with your thoughts at night, that keeps you holding on. And society doesn't make it easier, does it? We're constantly told that being in a relationship, any relationship, is better than being single. But is it? It's okay to admit that leaving feels hard. That's human. We all crave certainty, even when that certainty comes at the expense of our well-being. But you need to understand that certainty isn't the same as happiness. Being with someone out of fear doesn't make the relationship stable, it makes it a cage. You deserve more than that. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, once wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." Let that sink in for a moment. Are you truly living your truth in this relationship, or are you merely surviving? If fear is the only thing keeping you tethered, you're not choosing love, you're avoiding loss. And there's a huge difference between the two. Think about it. Fear doesn't create connection. It doesn't spark joy or foster intimacy. It creates a cycle of inertia where you stay stuck because the alternative feels too uncertain. Maybe you fear the judgment of others, family, friends, or even society if you walk away. Or perhaps you've convinced yourself that no one else will ever love you the way this person does, even if their love is lukewarm or conditional. But the truth is that fear is a liar. It exaggerates your doubts and minimizes your worth. It tricks you into believing that the unknown is worse than a life spent settling. And the longer you stay in that space, the harder it becomes to see your potential. So how do you move past this? How do you overcome the fear of leaving and step into a life where you can thrive? Start by building a foundation of support. Talk to people you trust, friends, family, even a therapist, about what you're feeling. Sometimes, just voicing your fears out loud can help you see them for what they are, temporary obstacles, not permanent truths. Next, focus on personal growth. When you're stuck in fear, it's easy to lose sight of your strengths and capabilities. Rediscover them. Take up a hobby, learn a new skill, or pursue a goal that's entirely your own. These small victories remind you that you're capable of creating a fulfilling life, even outside the context of a relationship. Relationships are some of the most beautiful, complex, and challenging aspects of life. They teach us about love, connection, and, more importantly, about ourselves. Over the past 5 signs, we've taken a deep dive into what it feels like when a relationship might not be the right fit. And while this journey may not have been easy, recognizing these signs is the first step toward something better. So let me ask you, where do you see yourself in this video? Are you walking on eggshells, hiding your true self, or holding on out of fear? Or maybe you're just starting to notice cracks in the foundation. Whatever it is, take a moment to reflect. Grab a journal and ask yourself the hard questions. Am I happy? Do I feel seen and valued? Is this relationship helping me grow, or is it holding me back? The answers you're looking for are already within you. All it takes is the courage to ask the right questions. If this video resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend who might need to hear these words. And if you're still unsure or have questions, drop them in the comments. I'll be reading and responding. You don't have to navigate this alone. Thank you for spending this time with me. Take care of your heart, trust your instincts, and most importantly, believe in your worth. Because you are worthy. Worthy of love. Of joy. Of a life that feels fully, beautifully, your own. Don't forget to subscribe and check out the other videos on this channel to keep learning and empowering yourself. See you in the next one.